Let's dive right into where we left off, shall we? May this reading relax your mind and awaken your heart. Gary Liss, whose friendship would become a miracle in my life, was friendly, outgoing, and ever restless for the next adventure. Gary was a rebel who truly found himself when he found the counterculture. He and I had traveled to California together during the summer break of my junior year in high school. On the Sunset Strip and on the Haight-Ashbury, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Someone who's Californian can let me know. We reveled in the freedom we found in these havens for flower children. We met many beautiful people, idealists like ourselves. As for the more outrageous characters we encountered there, people who seemed to value being destructive, rude, or hedonistic, we steered clear. Oh, hello, dear Raina. You sure it's pronounced hate? Haight-Ashbury, thank you for letting me know. In 1969, I attended Miami-Dade College in Florida. Dade, or maybe Dade? Another name I'm not certain of. Anyway, along with my close friends from high school, Bassoon, Steve, and Gary. I, like so many of my generation, was young, wild, and hungry for adventure. But it was at this time that I first noticed something taking precedent over everything else. A desire for spirituality that burned in my heart. It grew daily. Someone gave me a book entitled The World's Great Religions. I drank in every word and wanted to devour more and more. In further readings of other books, I discovered an ancient Indian technique that taught silent meditation on the sacred syllable Om. Through my inner voyages, I uncovered a subtle reality so rich that I longed to go deeper. One morning, I saw a poster on my college campus advertising a lecture on transcendental meditation. Mike, a bearded, long-haired American, spoke on the science of consciousness as taught by Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. I was enthralled. Mike invited me to Hollywood, Florida, where, with no commitment, I could receive a personal meditation mantra. Once there, I placed a flower, handkerchief, and $35 on an altar, where a one-syllable mantra was whispered into my ear. Daily meditation became the most important part of my life. The seed of my spiritual inclination was sprouting rapidly. But along with that seed grew a weed, my aversion towards bigotry and fanaticism. In those days, by growing my hair long in protest of the norms of the establishment, I became a target for those who hated hippies, including the police, who used to pull me over, search me, and harass me on a regular basis. The truth was, I felt a sort of sad fulfillment when people hated me for my long hair, minority religion, or for what I believed. I felt it to be an honor to be persecuted for a noble ideal, rather than sell out to popular opinions or fashions. At the same time, I was also beginning to understand that to hate those who hated me was to share the same disease. I longed to break through these sectarian barriers and discover the inner essence of all religions, the oneness of God. While in college, I studied psychology and humanities, but my meditation and music remained priorities. Near the college, in the town of Opelika, was a house called The Ashtray, where the dedicated musician James Harmon lived. Known to us as Jimmy the Bear, he was a stout, long-haired, bearded man, and the lead singer and harmonica player for the Burning Waters Blue Band. The bear loved me like a little brother. One day, with a proud smile, he slapped one of his harmonicas into my hand. "Brother, I'm going to teach you how to play the harp." "But I don't know music," I responded shyly. "That doesn't matter, man. Your heart's got deep feeling, and that's what the blues are all about." From that day on, my harmonica became my inseparable partner in life. During this time, I was befriended by some African American students, and through one of them, developed a special friendship with an older woman who had been a close associate of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. A gentle but strong-willed woman. She too had dedicated her life to being a civil rights leader. As she was in her late 40s, and I only 18, I called her mother, and she called me son. We shared soul-searching discussions about Dr. King's vision and his sad assassination. A devout Baptist, she was kind and gracious, yet fearlessly determined. At one point, she organized a civil rights march through a neighborhood of Miami and invited me to participate. Her face lit up with surprise when I actually showed up. A white boy in a black march in the deep South. Proudly, she took me by the hand to walk beside her up front. Onlookers were appalled to see me there. White racists threatened and jeered as we passed. Some threw stones or bottles as the police looked the other way. Mother smiled as over 300 marchers sang Sam Cooke's anthem, "A change is gonna come, and we shall overcome." The march culminated in a rally in the park. Here the marchers sat on folding chairs. I sat beside my friend until she stepped up to the microphone under a coconut tree. Denouncing the injustices inflicted on her people, she urged the audience toward an uprising devoid of violence. Her voice thundered with conviction. "Violence will degrade us to the evil ways of our persecutors. We must be fearless and stand together and demand our rights, not with weapons and fire, but with integrity and faith in the Almighty God. We must boycott wherever we smell the stench of bigotry. In the face of our oppressors, we must never cower from the truth." Tears filled her eyes and her voice soared as she echoed her mentor. "This is America, the land of the free. We'll never give up until the chains of slavery are broken forever and we can shout into the heavens, 'Free at last, free at last.'" Reverend King had a dream. He died for his dream. We will live for his dream. Amen. Cheers filled the park. Taking her seat, she whispered in my ear, "Did you like it, son?" I nodded with conviction. Next rose a speaker who screamed out for a revolution. All hope for a non-violent solution terminated when Reverend King was shot dead, he said, his voice full of indignation and rage. "Brothers and sisters, rise from your slumber. We must fight fire with fire. The freedom of this nation was won by war, not peace. We must vow to exterminate our white oppressors and burn their cities." Half the crowd howled in support, while others sighed in shame. Soaked with sweat, the man shook his fist in frenzy. They plot to keep us forever in the back of their buses and prisoners of the ghettos. Hatred ignited in his eyes as he thrust his finger toward me, screaming, "Look here, brothers and sisters, see this insidious white man. Today in our march, he shamelessly walks in front, leaving us black folk in the back." His supporters roared in fury. The man went on to identify me as the symbol of everything they despised. He thundered on, inciting vengeance and retribution. My friend leaped up to defend me. but her protest was muted by the man's fury as he now controlled the microphone and a majority of the crowd. Gripping my hand tenderly, she shook her head in dismay. "Son, I'm terribly sorry. I brought you to the front of the march, and God knows that. You trusted me, and now you're in jeopardy." She squeezed my hand and sighed. "You better leave now, and may God be with you." I crept from the tree to tree from the rally. My friend watched carefully, ready to rise and defend me if required. I was struck by the way so many people, even as they are yearning for equality and justice, focused on difference to the point of violence. Still, with a deep breath of relief as I left the park, I realized that my admiration for Dr. King and his followers had been heightened by the day's experience. I felt that, faithful to their ideal, they fought oppression relentlessly from without and within. As I walked alone under the Florida sun, I recalled a passage that shed light on the experience. If a person does not have an ideal he's ready to die for, he has nothing really meaningful to live for. Then it came to me. Martin Luther King Jr. had a dream he lived and died for, and that dream changed the world. Wasn't that power in all of us if we pursued our calling? I completed 1 year at Miami Dade School. Dade? Summer break came and I found myself standing alone on the edge of a highway in rural Pennsylvania. My thumb stretched upward, my wavy black hair draped down my back. It was a humid day, and I was headed to New York City to visit a friend. Just 19 years old, only 5'6" and hardly 120 pounds. I felt frail and vulnerable whenever I hitchhiked. Dade like maid. Thank you for letting me know, Gunlord. Dade. 3 hours passed before a rusty 59 Plymouth slammed on its brakes and halted. I ran to the car and expressed my gratitude. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. A single middle finger thrust from out the window, and the sweating motorist inside scowled. Get a job, you useless parasite. He shoved his stocky arm out the window, grabbed a length of my long hair, and jerked my face close to his. The stench of beer and tobacco blasted me. Spitting on the ground, he cursed. Punk, if I had my shotgun, I'd shoot you dead. He swerved away, tires squealing. I coughed up the black smoke I'd inhaled from his exhaust pipes. Resentment swelled in my chest, but I wrestled to curb it. I was seeking a spiritual life. On roadsides, I sometimes felt like an open target for anyone suffering from anger or negativity. But I hoped all these difficulties might help me grow. I knew I needed to learn the value of patience, perseverance, and prayer to overcome obstacles. In the summer of 1970, wearing one's hair long was not just a fashion, it was a statement of discontent, an aggressive challenge to mainstream value, driven by money, power, and prejudice. It was a signal of what I believed. My friends and I were living out our beliefs, protesting the war we'd been tear-gassed the year before at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, and conservative police often harassed us in our college town. All this simply because we yearned for a meaningful life with ideals we could live and die for. Although in my heart I bore malice toward no one, my appearance invited hateful reactions. Finally, after hours waiting for a ride, a friendly young man picked me up and brought me to his home near Gettysburg. There I sat alone in a forest on the bank of a creek. The song of the babbling stream soothed my heart. The flowing waters swirled around both wood and stone. The creek seemed to know a secret that could unfold the mysteries of life. If only, like the running stream, I just follow my calling, I thought. Nature may whisper her secrets and guide me to my destiny. Days later, after I had arrived in New York, my friend Hackett took me to Randall's Island Rock Festival. An array of bands, from Jimi Hendrix to Mountain, took the stage and played with abandon. I wandered away for a break and was approached by a young American with a shaved head. He wore white robes, and I took him to be a strange sort of monk. With no explanation, he handed me a pamphlet and asked for a donation. I told him I had no money, and as we were talking, another man approached, a pusher wanting to sell me hashish. When I repeated that I couldn't pay for anything, the two of them got into a debate together and wandered off. The monk forgot to take his pamphlet, and, without giving it a second glance, I slipped it into my little bag. The next day, at Hackett's home in Brooklyn, I got a telephone call from Gary asking me to come to Cherry Hill, New Jersey, to our friend Frank's house. When I got there, I found Gary and Frank kneeling over a map stretched out on the living room carpet. "We're going to Europe in a few days," Gary told me. "You've got to come." I was completely broke and had plans to go back to Chicago as I had a job for the summer. But Frank assured me he had enough money for the three of us. "All right," I said. "I'll go." All that remained was to explain my plans to my parents in Highland Park. No one in my family had ever ventured outside America. How would my protective mother and father react? I traveled back to my childhood home to find out. Sitting at our round glass-topped dining table, I stared down at the homemade dinner my mother had prepared. She would personally cook a feast for us every evening. Neatly arranged on my plate was succulent lasagna, crispy Italian bread lavished with a buttery garlic sauce, and buttered artichoke hearts. The aroma of sautéed herbs and spices wafted across the room. "I've decided to go on a trip to Europe with Gary," I announced. Blank faces stared back at me across the table as I nervously shook extra salt and pepper over my food. "It will be an education, don't you think?" No reply. I looked around the kitchen at the flowered wallpaper and at the hot point stove and refrigerator, both pink, my mother's favorite color. "We'll learn so many lessons, don't worry. I'll be back in September for college. We're leaving in 3 days." Silence. Mother looked as if she were receiving news of the death of a loved one. "Richie," she sobbed suddenly, "why do you have to do this? How will you eat? Where will you sleep?" She anxiously shook her head and pleaded in a tender voice, "You're just a boy. Who will protect you?" My father sighed. "My son, are you crazy? The world is a dangerous place. You're young and inexperienced. Anything could happen to you." Exhaling deeply, he added, "I'd forbid you if I thought you'd listen, but you won't." He stared silently, pleading for me to change my resolve, but I ignored him. His voice choked with emotion. He told me, "I'll worry day and night until the day you return." My little brother Larry exclaimed, "Cool, I wish I could go." But seeing the torment of our parents, he grew sober. "Richie, please write sometimes." Alright, what an introduction into the life of little Richie, later to become Radhanath Swami. That is the end of the first chapter. And for your patience, there's a little bonus at the end of this chapter. There's some pictures that maybe you'd like to see. Here we have on the upper left the author's parents, Idel and Jerry Slavin. You'd like to look at these, perhaps. There they are. Quite good looking, I would say. And then the upper right, little Richie, later known as Radhanath Swami, age 8. Here is our author. Cute. I like that. And below, in 1970, at age 19, the author set out on a journey of self-discovery. Wow. I didn't even know that was the same person. What a powerful appearance that is. Almost reminds me of Paramahansa Yogananda. There's actually many pictures here. I'll save some for the next time we read, when we begin the second chapter, but I'll show you a little more. Above, there's the Capuchin tomb. My goodness. Made up of many skulls, it looks like. Wow. That's quite an aura, isn't it? Wild. And then below that, there's a street band in Greece where the author played harmonica with a lifelong friend, Gary, who was introduced far right. How lovely. They look, oh yes, very, very 60s. 60s, 70s. That's for sure. And on the opposite page, a mysterious and prophetic poster that the author discovered in New Delhi. Oh, I think there's some foreshadowing here based on what's to come in the next chapters. Who knows who that is? It's Krishna. That's right, dear Sargam. Alright, we'll pause our reading and our exploration there for now. There's some more pictures next time. Thank you very much.